Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today we've got a very specific mission. We are going to completely decode Chapter 5 of your economics syllabus, poverty. Look, I know textbooks can sometimes feel like a massive wall of complex jargon, but my promise to you is that by the end of this explainer, we're going to have this massive economic challenge simplified into a really clear, visual diagnosis. We're mapping out exactly what you need to understand, retain, and absolutely nail for your exams. Okay, let's dive right in. This is the central question we have to answer. What exactly is poverty? You know, it's not just a simple lack of money, it's really an economic disease where a huge portion of the population literally cannot satisfy their absolute minimum basic requirements. It means living deprived of the bare essentials required for a healthy, dignified life. And to treat any problem, well, you first have to diagnose it properly.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. Defining poverty, 2. Types of poverty, 3. Key indicators, 4. Root causes, and finally 5. Government measures.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, Defining Poverty.
Now, the traditional approach here is the income definition, which revolves around the poverty line. The textbook defines it as, and brace yourself for the jargon here, a normative minimum level of per capita consumption expenditure required to ascertain minimum basic needs. Basically, how much money does one single person need to spend just to survive? But historically, this had a pretty huge limitation. It only tracked calorie intake. So it was actually less of a true poverty line and more of a starvation line. And poverty, as we know, is obviously a lot more than just having food on your plate.
Let's quickly trace how this definition actually evolved over time. Back in the 1960s, the Indian Council of Medical Research strictly looked at calories, 2,400 a day in rural areas and 2,100 in urban areas. Fast forward a bit to 1993, and the Lokhtawala Committee comes in and updates the base prices. But the real game changer happened with the Tendolkar Committee in 2009. They modernized the criteria for the 2011-2012 calculations, realizing that a minimum standard for a decent quality of life requires way more than just calories. It absolutely requires education and health expenditure too.
Moving right along to Section 2, Types of Poverty.
Okay, so you have absolute poverty and you have relative poverty. Absolute poverty is the complete inability to satisfy basic needs. It means living strictly below that official poverty line we just talked about. It's a measure of total scarcity. Now, relative poverty is different. This isn't about starvation. It's about income inequality among different groups in society. It compares income brackets. So if Group A earns 30,000 and Group B earns 1 lakh, Group A is relatively poor compared to Group B. Economists actually measure this using tools you might have heard of, like the Gini coefficient and the Lorenz curve.
Now, for absolute poverty, you need to lock this exact number in your brain for the exams. 816 rupees. That was the absolute poverty line set by the Tendolkar Committee for the year 2011 to 2012 for rural areas. Meaning, if a person's monthly consumption expenditure in a village was below 816 rupees, they were officially classified as absolutely poor. For urban areas, because everyday living costs are just higher, that line was set at 1,000 rupees.
Look at the stark contrast in these numbers. Using that exact Tendulkar methodology for 2011 to 2012, absolute poverty in rural India was sitting at 25.7%, while in urban areas it was nearly half that, at 13.7%. This tells us right away that while poverty is definitely a national issue, the heaviest concentration, the absolute deepest part of the problem, lies right in our rural areas.
Let's look at the real-world symptoms now in Section 3, Key Indicators of Poverty.
The data here reveals the really harsh daily reality behind all those numbers we just went over. It's not just about a lack of cash, it's about a severe lack of basic human necessities. According to the 2011 census, only 63.3% of families get pure drinking water through treated sources. Think about housing for a second. We're talking about roughly 60 crore people literally living in dwellings that are physically dangerous for them and their families. And medically, in developing economies like India, there's only 1 doctor available for every 6,000 people. These are severe human symptoms of a drastically lower quality of life.
And another massive symptom here is sanitation. Just looking at slum families specifically, while 66% do have a toilet facility within their house, a staggering 34% still do not. They have to rely on common or outside facilities, and this lack of basic cleanliness directly leads to waterborne and contagious diseases. When people are sick, their physical weakness totally lowers their workforce productivity, which, you guessed it, traps them right back in poverty. It's a completely vicious cycle.
So, let's dig into the why in Section 4, Root Causes of Poverty.
To keep it easy for your exam, we can actually categorize the root causes into 4 main buckets. First, historical causes. British colonial exploitation severely damaged our traditional agriculture and industrial sectors, leaving a nasty legacy of debt from the zamindari system. Second, rural causes. A huge dependence on uncertain monsoons combined with a rapidly growing population. Third, economic factors. Low agricultural productivity per laborer, really unequal land distribution, and rapid price rises that just crush purchasing power. And finally, the fourth bucket, social reasons. Let's look a bit closer at those social reasons with this quote derived straight from our source material. Low education among poor makes them conservative and less acceptable to changes. High rate of ignorance is a strong indicator of poverty. What this means is that a scarcity of education and skill training means laborers are way less capable of adapting to new technologies or finding better employment. It severely limits their choices, which keeps their wages permanently stuck at the bottom.
All right, time for the treatments. Section 5, Government Solutions and Measures.
Now that we've fully diagnosed the root causes, how does the government actually treat this? Well, they use a multi-step strategy. Step 1 is increasing agricultural productivity by informing farmers about upgraded technology and providing much better infrastructure. Step 2 focuses heavily on developing small-scale and cottage industries because those are massive drivers of employment. And Step 3 involves launching highly targeted employment, social security, and housing schemes.
For your exams, you absolutely must know the specific schemes. So, let's spotlight Treatment 1, MGNRGA, or the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. This is arguably one of the most critical wage employment schemes ever launched.
The absolute crucial point to remember here is the guarantee. MGNRGA literally guarantees a minimum of 100 days of wage employment in a year to at least one person from every single eligible family. It focuses heavily on the rural poor and lower middle class. And actually, it's not just a handout. The labor is used to create real, tangible public construction assets in these rural areas. So it's effectively building up local infrastructure while providing vital income at the same time.
Now let's look at spotlight treatment number 2, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. If MGNREGA attacks rural unemployment, Jan Dhan attacks the glaring lack of financial inclusion.
This scheme famously allows people to open bank accounts with a zero balance, but it goes way further than that. After 5 months, it provides an overdraft facility of 5,000 rupees. But maybe more importantly, it ensures that government subsidies go directly into the bank accounts of poor families, totally cutting out the middlemen who used to take a cut. By providing microfinance and banking to the unorganized sector, it hits directly at the root of poverty.
And just to put the sheer scale of this treatment into perspective, look at this number, 12.58 crore. That is the incredible number of Jan Dhan accounts opened by early January just following its launch in August 2014. It generated thousands of crores in investment. It's just a massive systemic push to bring the poorest citizens directly into the formal economy.
Well, we've covered the definitions, the stark indicators, the deep-rooted causes, and the massive government interventions. But I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to chew on as you study this chapter. We learned that India's per capita income and growth have surged. But does economic growth always equal poverty reduction? Or does the rising relative poverty and unequal income distribution we discussed kind of hide the true picture of our development? It's something economists are still wrestling with today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Study hard, and I'll catch you in the next one.